everyone. Thank you so much, Grace, for that. I'm really humbled by your kind words. I'd like to thank Adrian and Matt. Learned so much from what you guys have said, and again, it's really, really humbling. I kind of can go through my story. I think kind of the start of my story is based on I'm one of 9 kids. I'm the youngest of that group, and I want to take it back to more my childhood. And in 1973, Dad decided that he was going to emigrate and go back to Jamaica. So he would have been the second after the War to arrive in the UK, lived in England from the 1960s and 70s, and decided, well, I'm going to bring it back home. And as a 3-year-old, just go with the flow, whatever happens. So goes to Jamaica and kind of get to know the family. And I did realise at the time, as a child growing up, how important it was why Dad kind of brought us out there, because it kind of gave us the stability that we needed. I only kind of got to know that as I got older. But it would just come, doing this stuff. I got to know my grandfather, grandma, and the rest of the family. And there was something which was so fundamentally important growing up in Jamaica, is that the stability of the family is so important as a child growing up. And again, you don't recognise that at the time. I recognise that later on, being a father. I'm a father of 5, and I've got 3 grandchildren. But you don't understand it at the time until you get older, until you have to draw on those tools and how important those tools can be, and the lessons that you've learned. So that's the reason I want to bring mine on slightly differently, because I think in the upbringing of a child, there's an old saying, bring up a child in the way they should grow, and when they get older, they will never depart. So it's important, the tools that we use when we bring up our children is fundamentally important, especially as men. The dialogue that we use, the language that we use with our kids. When they're young, why are you crying? Why are you crying? You're a girl? Blah, blah, blah. So you start to implant certain seeds into young men when they're growing up. But what you don't realise is how much that affects them when they're growing up. Because when they come up against challenges, your blueprint, or what you draw back on, is the language that you were given when you were young. So when talk about vulnerability, we've just suppressed that vulnerability because we've stated that we're not really supposed to cry, we're not supposed to show any emotion. So most of the time we're going through things and we don't have that emotional intelligence in terms of dealing with these issues when they come, because we're supposed to man up. So going through that stuff, came back to England in 1980, and so I grew up in Jamaica. It's very nice and warm. Come back in December, left Jamaica in shorts, nice t-shirt. As soon as I came off the plane, the wind was just waiting for me, like, we'll come from the yard. So the team said, this is wrong, this is a healer. So I felt some real serious cold in that day. I thought, gosh. The next minute, the football thing, I want to go through the football thing. So got to primary school, games, everyone wanted to play games. I'm like, games, I've got to play football. I've not kicked the ball in my life. So it's crazy how I ended up being a goalkeeper. So without me playing football, couldn't play football. I looked around and I saw a guy wearing gloves, wearing tracksuit bottom, and could wear a hat. I was like, can I go in that position? I was like, I used to play cricket, all I got to do, I can catch a cricket ball, a football I can catch, but it's bigger. And it's crazy how things turn out and how your life maps out. And I actually became very good at it. Then eventually got into secondary school, got selected for South London, then got selected for Inner London, which was one step away from England, and then got selected through my school to go to Brentford, and then signed up at Brentford. Played against Alan Shearer, who I was guarding. Alan Shearer was at Southampton. Paul Ince, don't know if you guys remember that, the older man will remember that. And being a goalkeeper was just strange at that time. There weren't that many black goalkeepers around. In the 80s, the only one was this guy called Alex Williams, who played for Manchester City. But it was just by default, it was not that I wanted to be a goalkeeper, just like it was the only place I could end up being in. So, did all that football stuff. Got to know quite a few guys. One of my closest friends, again, sorry I have to break the news today, because I found that today. Kind of grew up with him, played football from the age of 13, lost his life today, Kevin Campbell. And so I got the news this morning, so I'm kind of dealing with that as well. Yeah, so that's kind of tough to deal with at the moment. But going through all of those different emotions, then what I decided to do as I got older, playing football and so forth, then I became a father. So it's a full circle going back on the situation with being a father. And then I became a father when I was 17, with my son. And then the difficulty of, he's growing up, the different challenges, you didn't really know how to cope with those things. And all you do is go back to that default mode of how you talk to your kids and how you react to your kids. And I became a different father to the rest of my children than I was to my son when I was 17, because I'm just learning the ropes. There's no book, there's no mechanism, it's just like you just go with the flow. And then my default was going back to how my dad dealt with me and how I would react to certain situations, and that's how I would deal with my son, which was kind of hard on him, being a young father, because I'm just figuring it out. I was completely different to my daughters as they got older. But the reason why I'm going back to the thing about talking about being a father to your children, my third daughter went through a bad time with regards to, she was diagnosed autism, and she's on the spectrum. But she's high functional, meaning that she puts so much pressure on herself in terms of what she wants to achieve. And she's an amazing girl in terms of what she's got the brain to end up to go in Cambridge or Oxford, that's how bright she is. But if she didn't get A grades or got B grades, then she's just stressed out, which then subsequently led to a low self-esteem and so forth. And eventually then that moved on to, sad it may be, end up to being self-harming. And then as a father trying to deal with that, you're thinking, wait a minute, am I the only person that this is happening to? How do I cope with that? How do I deal with the situation that my daughter's going through that stuff? Where it became going from self-harming to becoming suicidal. And then as a father, how do you manage that? How do you deal with that situation? So then what used to hit me, I felt as a failure because I can't fix my daughter for what she was going through. And on 3 occasions, tried to take her life. And that's when I knew the vulnerability came in. How do I deal with this? Who do I talk to? And then, because everyone saw the other side of my success, playing football, running a design company, through what my daughter went through, that's when I decided to set a charity up. Because I remember going through so much trauma as a father and thinking, how do I deal with this? And I know I'm articulate and I can deal with certain things, and I'm thinking, but what about if there's other parents that's going through this difficulty? How do they manage? How do they navigate through this difficulty? Or that their children are struggling, and how do they cope? So I thought, you know what, let's set a charity up and see what I can do in terms of supporting our young people. So I set a charity up about 4 years ago, and now, just to go back to my daughter, she's doing really well now, so she's fine and she's got out of that, and she's working and doing really, really well, so thank God, and I'm ever grateful for His grace and the blessings that He's given that she's made through it. So I'm just saying, as a father, sometimes you'll go through some very difficult times, and it's about how you manage. I was saying to the guys that sometimes I see having friends around me, it's a bit like having a house and you've got scaffolding around it. You need that support mechanism. So what we've always said to you guys, don't ever be ashamed to feel to yourself that you need to talk. Because being a child and always thinking that if I'm vulnerable, right, it shows weakness. It doesn't. It shows strength. Because it's best to get it out and release it and talk to people about it instead of it consuming you. If it consumes you, it can take things to another level. and I've seen it. What Matt was talking about with his suicidal prevention. I lost the best friend of mine who committed suicide, and what he was going through at the time was everything was fantastic, everything was okay, and it wasn't. Because he felt that he didn't need to go to anyone to talk about it. So what I'm just saying to you, don't ever feel to yourself that you have to be afraid to be vulnerable and to talk. This is why we have this forum. I want to thank you guys for putting this forum on. And I thank you guys for turning up to be able to listen to what we're saying. And I hope in the dialogue that we've had that you might catch some nuggets out of it that will support you guys. But don't ever feel to yourself by not speaking about it is weakness. It's just being able just to get it out. And that's my point.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much.